first, before we open it up for questions, I thought we'd just hear from the guys here a little bit about their journey of how this came about, what the impetus for the film was. We know the story was the inspiration, but when, maybe we'll start with you, Bruce. When did you first hear about the story? How did you decide you wanted to make it a movie?
Sure, thanks. So to start with, our middle son and our daughter both are here at Gettysburg. So I actually became familiar with the story by reading, I guess watching the ESPN story, the coverage on the Gettysburg athletics page. And at that, just before that, Bob and I were talking about, we were friends, we worked together in 1985 at KBC Television in Los Angeles. And actually in about 1987 or 1988, Bob said to me, we should really produce a film together. He was right, but it was 25 years later. So when I heard about this story, I thought it fit what our values, and it was a tremendously inspirational story. And so I talked to Bob, and he agreed, and we talked to President Riggs and others, and they loved the idea, and one thing led to another, and here we are right now, and we start shooting next week.
Yeah, and Bruce, in my process, because I'm sort of wearing two hats in this, writer and then producer, and there really are, we can talk about that, they're really two totally different sort of mindsets and skill sets you have to get into. But so, Bruce, he called me up and said, you think this would make, I think this is for a movie? And I said, I think it'd be great. And I sort of had it originally pegged. You originally think, okay, this will be an inspirational sports movie, and those things always do well. So kind of an arm's length from it, and sort of like a business head on. And so then we came out on Memorial Day to interview Cory and his family. And over the course of that weekend, everything really changed for me as a writer, and I think for us as producers. As soon as we got to know Cory and his family, the characters behind this story just came to life. We found out what Cory stands for, and what a deep, thoughtful, motivated, inspiring young man that he is, and I'm sure a lot of you know him. And for those of you who don't, people outside of this room, hopefully this movie will introduce him to the world. And it was really, suddenly I felt like I was in the position, and a lot of people have come and say, oh, what a great screenplay you wrote. I'm really not false modest. I just say, thank you very much, but it's Cory's story, and I just sort of got out of the way of it, and that's really what it took, and it was, and in writing the screenplay, I won't take all the time, but he'd written some journals along the way of what he was going through, and he had written one about, it was called Chance, and had written, do things happen for a reason? Do bad things just happen, or is there something more to this that we can't see in the present tense, and only in looking back can we see a purpose for it all? And as soon as I read that, I felt like, now we have a theme for this movie, because before it was just, not just, but this happened, and this happened, this happened, this happened, but suddenly this beautiful understructure for the whole thing came. So that's when it for me really came to life.
So then, there was this very rich inspirational story, and as you read the script, you realize the inherent drama, in addition to that, of everything from his rise to that final basketball game and everything that took, the sinking of the last shot, his social life and love life as all of this transpires, the ups and the downs. Really, makes it the kind of story that is, just kind of begs to be told. So, and the overriding arc through all that is, Cory doesn't like to be thought of as a hero, and yet there were so few heroes in our lives today. And Cory would certainly be one of those people who, just the way he lives his life, the unassuming way he lives his life, for those of you who know him, would qualify in that regard. So we're excited to do it.
That was one of the first things he said when we were writing the script. He says, I don't want to be Superman. I was like, just that's who he is. So. And then the next part of the process, since once we had the script going and all that, it sort of looked like, that we might be moving forward with it. Then comes the part of actually, okay, now we've got to make this thing. And I'd known Mike for many years. We'd worked together at NBC originally, and worked on some other film projects together. And so I thought, I thought Mike would be a great fit for this story and his material, his background. And so we asked him if he wanted to direct a movie, and he graciously accepted our offer.
Didn't hesitate one bit. It's an incredible journey by an incredible young man, so you don't tell those kind of stories too often.
You want to talk a little bit about your casting process and how this come about?
Well, it's interesting. There are so few, this is for those of you, you've probably read this budget for this movie is just about $1 million, which by movie standards is about the lowest amount of money that you can pay and still have a feature film. And one of the reasons we were able to get the kind of cast that we have, David Henry playing Cory, Beau Bridges playing Coach Petrie, Jean Louisa Kelly playing Tina Weissman, Cassie Thompson playing one of the girls in Cory's life, Hannah Marks playing one of the girls in Cory's life, and both of these folks, these two women, are stars on on other television shows. And Luke Kleinbank playing Brendan. The reason we were able to get a cast like that is because the story really resonated in the community. It's so difficult to get a script that isn't full of special effects and has some amount of inspiration and some reason to be told, that we were able to get a really high quality, very exciting script. And there's one of our stars.
One of our stars in the green shirt. Right? He's very modest. Right?
Evan Harnish is going to play a young boy in the movie.
John, if you want to.
Yeah, so casting, it's a fun process. Luckily we, like Bruce said, that we were the people that we've gotten for this movie. I was walking back the other night with the assistant director from, we're just coming back in, and he stopped. He said, the amount of money that we have, this isn't supposed to happen this way. You're not supposed to have these stars. We're not supposed to have. And what's really happened is that we've really assembled this really special group of people, all doing it for the right reasons. Beau Bridges doesn't need this job. We're not even paying what he makes in a day, for his whole role. But he read it. He says, "Yeah, I want to do that. I want to do that kind of thing." David Henry, he's just coming off a hit Disney Channel show, has lots of offers from the same story. Again, we're paying him less than he made, again, maybe a week on his sitcom. But he not only did he want to, I want to do this. He actually, came and sort of fought for the role and showed, I can do this. Really, and incredibly fortunate to get him. So that process along the way. And then the other part is just kind of the fun, Hollywood, the fun/grueling casting process where they send in actors, and it's when I, as always, have such respect for performance, because they come in and we saw, a dozen people who could do a great job. And so you have to say, it's like the NFL, you have to say no to 11 of them, and they're all great, and you can't really go out after each one and say, we're so sorry, you were terrific, it's just that one little thing we were looking for. So it's tough, but anyway, we were really fortunate that we got our dream cast, beyond our dream cast for the amount of money we have. So.
And Mike headed up the casting process and gets to direct these folks.
That's right, and we cast a lot of roles out of LA. We cast a lot of roles out of Gettysburg. We have a lot of people in our movie right here from Gettysburg. Evan's over there. Where's your wife?
She's home with the kids.
Okay, well, she's in the movie. We just spent a very quick day in Washington, D.C., where we cast a couple of roles, and we have one more role to cast, and that we're hopefully going to nail that down, but we're going to New York City to kind of seek out some people there. So it's a process.
Did you have a question?
I was just kind of curious, because you said 11 people you said no to. Was it ever the case that you had to say no to a person because they wanted too much, given the budget constraints?
No, it wasn't on that. We were, before we went in, we sort of said, here's the parameters, this is what we have. It's got to be a labor of love. If you're looking for a big payday, maybe next time, but this one isn't it. So, look at the script and if you come, and we saw terrific performers. And I was telling the gracious family who had us for dinner last night and letting us stay at their house at the Wrights. When you watch professional actors, it's really funny to watch them. There's one girl has this really emotional scene, and she's apologizing because she, I'm so sorry, I just want to be for you. And we all have tears in our eyes. And Mike says, cut. She goes, so do you want it that way, or do you want me to do it? You are messing with my mind, girl. So they're really, really talented people.
Yeah, right.
So you're in pre-production now, right? You start shooting next week. Can you give us a sense of what what's going to happen on campus? Can you give everybody a sense of like what it's going to look like? Are there going to be cranes going on? You're going to make it rain? Or
we are going.
Is it smaller?
It's smaller. We're going to be very unobtrusive. We don't have giant cranes with cameras and lights all over the place, but we do have equipment. You will see us. It'll be obvious we're here. There's no barriers, nothing. You can watch from wherever you want, and probably we'll ask you, could you just walk across that scene for us? Because we need extras. It's a lot of fun, and it's also boring for a lot of people to sit there and wait 2 hours for us to light a scene. So, but we're not going to get in the way of classes or anything else, but you'll know we're here.
So if I can just say,
yeah, sure.
so on any given day, no matter where we are, there is a arc to the way the day goes. Is first you light it, then you probably talk about it a bit, then you shoot it, and then you either take a gander or whatnot. And during the time when you're not shooting, you know, it's fine to watch from afar and see the way we're doing it. We want this to be some kind of, you know, learning and experience, and just an experience for, you know, the entire campus. So, you know, that will be terrific. And one of the things I'll just say about Gettysburg College, and I feel like, you know, after being on campus probably 12 times over the past 3 years to hear our middle guy as a voice performance major sing, I felt like I knew everything that there was to know about Gettysburg College and the campus. But it is amazing. One of the things that I think is going to make this film really special is the variety of areas that we have to shoot. You know, you think about the college, and you know, of course, you know, the Jaeger Center, and you know, and the Breen basketball court are cutting edge, really beautiful. You know, but then as we were scouting locations, you know, we ran into Plank Gym. And, you know, for those of you who may have been in there, it is a really special place. And, you know, we are going to be in the Science Center. And the Science Center, you know, especially if you're up on the top of that stairwell there and you look down, it's like really, really special. And then you discover the planetarium. And I'm not sure if many of you may not even know that Gettysburg College has a planetarium. But, you know, so it's going to be great. We're going to be able to show what a great, modern, cutting-edge institution this is, with a real sense of history and a real sense of the value of history. And, you know, there's at least 2 or 3 different opportunities to show both of those. And, you know, besides the fact that I am, you know, personally, even before this film, an evangelist of Gettysburg College, you know, the ability to actually show that on film is going to make it a very, very rich cinematic film, which we couldn't really have anticipated when we started the process.
The other great thing we discovered, and then we'll bet, it's just, you know, we're employing a lot of students, you know, I feel like half of you already interviewed with us, but the level of student that we've had in terms of maturity and competency and initiative, it's just been stunning. I mean, you know, I have kids college age, and
despite us.
Yeah, no, it's a very special community. You guys should all be very proud of yourselves for the kind of kids that, not only for those of you who are at school there, but those of you helping them come up. It's a really an amazing group of people. So,
can I ask a question about budget? I'm sure it shocks a lot of people that $1 million is the very low end. But there is a long tradition, it probably goes back to the French New Wave, where they talked about this issue, that having a limited budget is not necessarily a liability, but it's a real opportunity. In some ways, you can do more with less money than if you had an average film is about 60 million instead of 1 million. And I'm wondering how you 3 look at that.
Can I go first on the issue?
Yeah, especially the director.
Well, yeah, if I can just start and then I'll hand it off to you, because Mike's the one who has to actually make it all happen. But one thing that happens as a writer is that, so what happens when you don't have a lot of money, immediately you focus in on, then we have to focus on the characters. Because, you know, we need scenes of people just talking or interacting or having emotions. Since we're not going to have a train derailing, and we're not going to have aliens, you know, level of Gettysburg. So what are we going to do? We have to have, you know, so right there you're kind of back to, you know, really what movies should be all about in the first place. It's, you know, a human story with solid people at the center of it. And usually in Hollywood movies, it's the other way around. Let's think of the big thing first, And then if, oh yeah, I guess there should be a little conflict in one of the characters, or I guess, you know, well, yeah, I put that on there. But anyway, back to the spaceship, you know. And that's really what it's all about. 'Cause it's about the spectacle and not about the people. You know, some of the good movies do both, but it's not that common. So as a writer, it's actually, in a strange way, liberating, because you really get to get into some stuff that you wouldn't get to do. You know, because I've written these other studio movies, and you just don't have the time. That's not what they're looking for. So.
Well, when Bob first called me, he called up, he kind of vaguely told me what was going on with Cory Weissman Story, and he said, how much can you make a movie for? And I said, 20,000, 200,000, anywhere in between. It's really what you have. So you have this amount, you just make it work. As you say, you can make a great film for very little money, and I think everybody here is wearing many hats, everybody here is doing many jobs. We're all saying, okay, we can't do that, but we can do this, or that's not going to work, but what about that? And film is a collaborative effort amongst everybody here, and that's how we make it work under those circumstances.
And the other thing, obviously, with digital technology, things have gotten a lot more, it's easier to do and less expensive. It still costs a lot of money to do stuff, but it's not where you're buying film and then processing. And you know, I don't know that 20 years ago you could have done this movie for this amount of money.
That's right. Yeah, film stock was always very expensive, and now nobody worries about that anymore.
Right.
Can we just take a few minutes to ask you guys to talk a little bit about like the journey of each of your careers, so the students get a sense of what the possibilities are. I mean, you've done a lot of. It sounds like you've done a lot of work in television, editing and directing, producing. So sort of lay out what all those things are. How did you start in the business? What drew you to it?
I always knew I wanted to be in filmmaking or in television since I was 12. I made my dad buy me a Super 8 movie camera, and he did things what most students do today. I only wanted to go to one school, which was USC, because I was told it had the best film school in the nation.
Did you grow up in California?
I grew up in New York City in the Bronx. And so my parents go, "You going where?" And I said, "Yeah, that's where I'm going." I went to film school, and then I got jobs in a totally different, related but unrelated field in promotion for a network, and then as an executive, and then as an executive in the studio. But I still wanted to direct, and I had risen to the role of senior vice president of New World Television, and I'll tell the story. They wanted another 2 years out of me in my contract. And I said, I don't know, I really want to direct. And they said, you're senior vice president, just give yourself an assignment. I go, okay. So I gave myself an assignment on some shows, and that's honestly how it started. But I could have spent those 12 years from the very get-go coming out of USC to where I actually got to direct, probably in the same way if I had started out as a PA, assistant director, and so on and so forth. It does take that long if you just kind of go the natural route. Some people get a break and they do it right away. But it's a journey, and you pay your dues, but you never give up your passion, you'll make it.
For me, it was almost exactly the opposite. I just finished 30 years with the Walt Disney Company, and I like to say that even the bad days were good days. I've had a wonderful, wonderful career, and yet I didn't even know before I started that. I actually started out on the finance side, worked for Price Waterhouse, did consulting, and then wanted to move from New York to San Francisco. And I had an offer from Bank of America and an offer from KGO Television, the Disney ABC station in San Francisco. And in one of those moments of clarity, I said, I can go into finance any day. I think I'll see what this is like. And it was love at first sight. And what I think is the important takeaway there is I was 31 when that happened. And so many people now, you see, careers going in fits and starts, people graduate from college and they don't, you don't actually know what you're going to do, and so you take the best job you can get, even though it's not in your major, and sometimes you move back in with your parents, and there's really no reason, at least in my case, to decide that, because in some instances like mine, you don't actually know. And so I would kind of like say amp down on the pressure and trying to figure that out. But for me, when I left Price Waterhouse which was probably I was probably the most liberal person in a very conservative firm, And I went to KGO Television, where I was instantaneously the most conservative person in a liberal, business. What's money? What are expenses? And it was love at first sight, and I never looked back. And so I went from 20 years on the television side, CFO of KBC Television in Los Angeles, president and general manager of our TV station in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. And then for the last 11 years, a completely brand new experience, being worldwide CFO for Walt Disney Interactive Media, and which was a life change in itself, because it was an area where I knew the tenets of management, but I didn't really know the subject matter, as well, other than being a user, online, console games, mobile, and social. And so what that actually says is that, even really when you're more towards the end and the beginning of your career, you can still reinvent yourself. So for me, it's been an incredibly enriching, varied, 4-city tour, 30-year experience with the Walt Disney Company. One that I believe was all a precursor to what is happening here today. So it's been a great opportunity for me, and I'll just go back to the beginning of what I said is, grab the best experience you can get for yourself and don't try to overanalyze it.
Yeah, I would echo that. And, we're all fathers up here, so it's hard for us not to give fatherly advice. So indulge me for a moment, but I think what Bruce said about amping down the pressure on yourself. I was in Servo today, which, by the way, we are loving Servo. Seriously. Like, I'll have a salad and a chicken breast, and on my way out I'll have a waffle and 5 cookies and a pizza, and then on the way to the door, anyway. But I was in there today, and there was these motivational sayings up, and one of them was Oliver Wendell Holmes that said, all limitations are self-imposed. And it caught my eye, and I thought about that, and just when Bruce was talking just now, I think my personal journey would be slightly guilty of self-imposing limitations. Is that when I was, some of your age, when I was in college, I had a friend we had a radio, TV, film department. And ever since I was a kid, I was like Mike, I was making movies with Super 8 things, and I was writing, and that's all I ever did. But I got to college, and I thought, well, that's just not a real major, As I was telling the Rice last night, my mom was a school teacher, my dad was an aerospace engineer, and I thought that just, you don't go to school to study that, you go to school to study something serious, And then I'd go to my friends' classes, and I'd be looking like, man, that looks like fun. And so finally, after being a philosophy major and a journalism major, it's like, okay, I'll be a radio, TV, film major, and I was back where I wanted to be, and I wanted to write and produce and direct then. Then the next time, as I came to get a job, well, how do you do that? Well, it sounds really touchy-feely and weird, and I wouldn't even know how to get started if I wanted to. But I had a professor who helped me get a job as a page at NBC, and so I found myself behind a desk wearing a tie, making phone calls. And Mike's department, they were doing editing and writing and all that in the on-air promo department. I said, well, that's really what I don't want to be behind a desk making phone calls. So I got doing that, and then I rose. Next thing I knew, 5 years later, I was behind a desk making phone calls again. And it was great. I mean, I had great experiences, and like Bruce said, the wealth of experience all, in a weird way, led me to where I am today. But I said, I stopped, and at the time, my father had recently passed away, and I was sort of having one of those, carpe diem moments, and I thought, you wanted to write. That's where this all started. And, a lot of credit to my wife, because our son was 6 months old or something, and I said, honey, I want to leave this nice job at the network and, be a writer. And, and I'd gotten a nibble from growing pains at the time. And she said, if that's what you're going to do, go for it. So, I did, and I left a really good job. And a lot of people thought I was crazy, and I probably was crazy, for a 13-week contract. But, I was back doing what I wanted to do. And I've never looked back since then. And there's been good times, there's been rough times, but I really would say, and it takes, it's hard to do at your age to say, this is what I want to do, and I want to, I really want to try to follow that. And it's, what we do for a living is not easy, but, show me a business that is easy. It doesn't exist anymore, and you might do like Bruce and Mike. If you notice, each one of us had little, I don't want to call them course corrections, but little adjustments along the way, because you just don't know where it's going to take you. So, but I would say just be open to possibility, and don't make your ceiling too low for yourself. It's easy to do.